Britain has plunged into an authoritarian nightmare. What began as a series of quiet policy shifts under Prime Minister Keir Starmer has now exploded into one of the most aggressive government crackdowns in modern British history. Farmers, those who feed the nation, are being dragged from their land in handcuffs. Citizens are being detained without trial for nothing more than refusing to comply with overreaching environmental mandates and speech codes. If you're fed up with the political games tearing Britain apart, now's the time to stand up. Subscribe now and join a growing community demanding truth, accountability, and leadership that actually listens. We break the stories the mainstream won't touch, and we do it for you. This is our country. Let's take it back together. Subscribe now. This isn't dystopian fiction. This is Britain right now. Under the newly passed National Integrity and Unity Act, Starmer's government has granted itself sweeping unchecked powers: indefinite detention, warrantless surveillance, arbitrary property, seizures, all under the pretense of protecting the nation. The real aim: total control. And the targets? Not criminals, not terrorists, but farmers, church leaders, civil liberties activists, and ordinary citizens who dare question the regime's dictates inside Buckingham Palace. Something unprecedented happened. King Charles III, long restrained by convention, protocol, and symbolic detachment, reportedly erupted after watching footage of police in riot gear storming family farms in Dorset and Cumbria. Multiple palace sources confirmed that Charles personally phoned Keir Starmer demanding, "To know what kind of nation are you running? This wasn't a polite chat." According to insiders, the king was furious, warning the prime minister that he had shattered public trust and was testing the limits of constitutional silence. The palace is now a political pressure cooker. Royal aides are scrambling. Reports suggest Charles has recorded a national address, perhaps the first time a monarch will publicly condemn a sitting government since the English Civil War. The stakes couldn't be higher. Non-compliance, a government weaponized. Across the nation, a single word is being used like a guillotine: non-compliance. This is the justification the government has chosen to crush opposition. Peaceful protesters. Non-compliant. Landowners refusing to install state-mandated carbon meters. Non-compliant. Parents objecting to political indoctrination in schools. Non-compliant. And under the Unity Act, non-compliance means detention, asset seizure, and in some cases, blacklisting from employment or travel. It stows no longer a policy. It stops persecution. The resistance rises. Reform UK leads the fight. In this vacuum of chaos, one political force has surged. Reform UK, led by Nigel Farage. Farage has become the spearhead of the resistance. While Labour MPs hide behind armed guards and Starr refuses to appear in public, Farage is marching with the farmers, speaking in town halls, and calling for a snap general election to remove what he calls a rogue government disguised as democracy. And the people are responding. Membership in Reform UK has doubled in just 2 weeks. Donations are flooding in. Polls show the party could overtake Labour in a general election if it were held tomorrow. In Farage Sepswords, we sept, not fighting left or right anymore. We sept fighting tyranny. Across the country, fire in the fields and fury in the streets. What began in the countryside has spread like wildfire. Over 120,000 demonstrators packed central London under the banner of the Freedom Front, a loose coalition of farmers, truckers, veterans, clergy, and students. In Scotland, entire towns are staging rolling walkouts. In Wales, sheep farmers blocked motorway junctions with livestock holding signs that read, "Feed Britain, not bureaucrats." In Manchester, 40 peaceful protesters were arrested for disruptive presence. Across the land, British flags fly upside down, a traditional naval signal of distress. This is not politics as usual. This is rebellion, media blackouts, and digital censorship. While Britain burns, the mainstream media stays curiously muted. Several outlets previously critical of Labour have gone quiet. Social media users report mass takedowns of protest footage. Activists claim their live streams are being throttled or removed entirely. According to insiders, Ofcom has issued confidential guidance to major broadcasters, warning that airing incendiary protest footage could violate national security. Guidelines under the Unity Act. Translation. Dunby, Show the people the truth. But the truth is finding a way through loyalties, shifting inside the military and church. Something profound is happening behind the scenes. Several high-ranking military officials have leaked statements anonymously criticizing the government's use of force against citizens. Some regional commanders are reportedly refusing to deploy their troops for domestic suppression. Meanwhile, church leaders across denominations are denouncing the government's morality laws and forced compliance regulations. One Anglican bishop declared from his pulpit, "This is not governance, this is occupation." When the clergy and the commanders start speaking with one voice, something bigger is stirring. The palace weighs its options. With each passing hour, the pressure mounts on King Charles III. Does he stay silent and risk complicity in authoritarianism, or does he break precedent and become the voice of a silenced nation? Inside royal circles, the debate is ferocious. Advisors warn of constitutional crisis, but the king is reportedly adamant. If it must choose between silence and sovereignty, I choose the people. Some legal scholars argue that the monarchy retains residual emergency powers in times of democratic breakdown. If invoked, they could dissolve parliament, remove the prime minister, and call for an emergency election. Would the king dare where this ends choice or collapse? Britain stands on a knife-sip's edge. One path leads to accountability, to a nation reclaiming its voice, to the restoration of liberty through peaceful resistance and principled leadership. The other path, continued defiance, deepening arrests, and constitutional silence, leads straight to societal fracture, economic collapse, and their reversible erosion of what it means to be British. This is no longer about Star. It's about who we are. The banners and the protests say it all. We are not subjects. We are citizens. And citizens? No matter how long they're pushed, always push back. It came at precisely 5 p.m. Every major British broadcaster cut to a live feed from Windsor Castle. The Union Jack flew at half-mast, not for a death in the royal family, but for the democratic values now hanging by a thread. King Charles III, standing, alone without crown or regalia, stared down the camera with the solemnity of a monarch who had seen too much. "My beloved countrymen," he began, "I speak tonight not as a ruler, but as a servant of the United Kingdom, sworn to uphold its dignity, its law, and its liberty." For the next 10 minutes, the king did what no monarch had done in over 400 years. He publicly rebuked a sitting government. He called the Unity Act a constitutional perversion. He condemned the arrests of farmers and protesters as state-sanctioned tyranny. He invoked Magna Carta, the Glorious Revolution, and the wartime spirit of Churchill in defense of the people's right to challenge power. Then, in armament that will be quoted for generations, when a government no longer hears its people, it ceases to govern, it merely controls. And this kingdom, this ancient kingdom, was not built to be ruled in silence. The country erupted in pubs and living rooms and hospitals and barracks, in fields and factories. Britain stood and cheered. This wasn't just a speech, it was a declaration. The king had picked a side, a government in freefall. Within hours of the broadcast, cracks in Kostama's government turned to craters. 7 cabinet ministers submitted their resignations, including the Home Secretary and the Defense Minister. Labour HQ issued a hasty statement insisting the Prime Minister had full confidence in his remaining team, though no one believed it. By morning, Labour backbenches began resigning the whip en masse, declaring themselves independents or joining the swelling ranks of Reform UK. Several Labour MPs crossed the aisle on live TV, citing irreconcilable differences with authoritarian policy. Starmer's official response, he doubled down. In a rambling press conference flanked by nervous-looking advisors, he accused foreign interests and reactionary forces of undermining Britain's democratic institutions. He refused to resign. He refused to repeal the Unity Act. He refused to acknowledge the king's constitutional authority. That was the moment many now say that Keir ceased to be a prime minister and became a national liability. Mass defections and an emergency parliament. 2 days later, Parliament reconvened under extraordinary circumstances. Over 130 MPs from all major parties, Labour, Tory, Lib Dem, SNP, Greens, and Independents, signed a joint resolution calling for the immediate repeal of the National Integrity and Unity Act, their signation of Keir Starmer, the formation of an interim unity government, a general election within 90 days. This wasn't just political theater. This was a coordinated act of constitutional restoration, and for once the Speaker of the House allowed it to proceed without interference. Starmer, still clinging to power, refused to appear in person. He attempted to rule by decree from Number 10, issuing statements through unelected advisors. But the chamber had spoken. The majority of the Commons declared that the Prime Minister no longer held their confidence, and more importantly, no longer represented the people. The people mobilized. While politics waged its war behind closed doors, the people took matters into their own hands. In Birmingham, over 20,000 farmers drove tractors into the city centre, blocking roads and occupying the BBC's Midlands headquarters. In Edinburgh, teachers, NHS staff, and veterans chained themselves around the Scottish Parliament building, demanding the end of tyranny. In Cornwall, fishing towns shut down their ports in solidarity with the farming protests, flying the old St. Piran's flag in defiance. And in London, the Freedom Front swelled to over 300,000 demonstrators, the largest protest in British history. Footage showed pensioners singing Rule Britannia Next to university students, waving placards that read "No crown without consent." This was no longer just opposition. This was a peaceful uprising. Jalabal reactions and diplomatic chaos. The international community began to weigh in. The European Union issued a carefully worded statement expressing deep concern over the state of British governance. The United States, normally a close ally, suspended a bilateral trade summit, citing instability in Westminster. The Canadian and Australian governments publicly supported King Charles' statement, invoking their own parliamentary traditions to reinforce the idea that monarchy can serve as a check on authoritarianism, not a tool of it. Markets tumbled briefly but stabilized once Parliament demonstrated it could still function independently of Number 10. Behind the scenes, foreign intelligence agencies began investigating the flow of money behind the Unity Act. Whispers of Chinese influence, deep lobbying from unregistered foreign firms, and data contracts awarded to offshore companies added another layer to the unfolding disaster. What began as a domestic scandal had become a geopolitical flashpoint. The final showdown, Buckingham Palace v. Downing Street. Then came the moment the world was waiting for. In the early hours of Friday morning, a sealed royal letter written in the King's own hand was delivered to Parliament. Its contents: a formal invocation of royal emergency powers last used during the abdication crisis of 1936. The King had ordered the immediate suspension of Keir Starmer's ministerial duties, the appointment of an interim caretaker prime minister selected from a consensus of the majority parties, the dissolution of Parliament, with general elections to be held within 60 days. Starmer, confronted by the unprecedented royal directive, refused to leave Downing Street. But his security detail, made up of former military officers, had already made a decision. He was escorted out of Number 10, not in handcuffs but in silence. The moment was filmed, shared, celebrated. Across the country, church bells rang. Crowds sang the national anthem. Flags were unfurled, and for the first time in weeks the air felt breathable. Britain had reclaimed itself. Aftermath and reconciliation. The transition was swift. A unity government, led by a cross-party council, took immediate steps to repeal the Unity Act, release all nonviolent political prisoners, freeze and audit all government contracts issued under the Starmer administration, establish a royal commission on civil liberties, to prevent future overreach. Nigel Farage, though instrumental in rallying opposition, declined to take power, insisting that the people, not parties, should decide the next government. Faking addressed the nation once more, praising the courage of the British people, and calling for a season of reconciliation, not revenge. A new era begins. Today, Britain stands humbled but not broken. The trauma of the Starmer regime, its arrogance, its overreach, its willingness to jail dissenters and defy the rule of law has left scars. But it has also sparked something greater, a reawakening of democratic spirit. People who once shrugged at politics now speak with conviction. Civics' classes are full. Local councils are swamped with volunteers. Newspapers report record subscriptions. The union is healing not through mandates but through mutual respect. And above it all, one message echoes from the highlands to the coastlines. Never again will one man decide the fate of a free people. with Karmama. Removed from office and the National Integrity and Unity Act formally repealed, Britain has entered a period of reflection, reckoning, and renewal. The newly formed unity government led by interim Prime Minister Harriet Dunning, a backbench Empress respected, across party lines for her integrity and constitutional literacy, has wasted no time addressing the wreckage left behind. Parliament, now functioning with an unusual degree of cross-party cooperation, has moved with historic speed to re-establish democratic protections, rein executive power, and heal public trust. The Royal Commission on Civil Liberties was formally launched just 1 week after the transition, composed of former judges, historians, civil society leaders, and constitutional scholars. Its mission is simple: conduct a full inquiry into the abuses committed during the Starmer administration and recommend sweeping safeguards to prevent them from happening again. Among its first acts, reinstatement of habeas corpus rights for all detained under emergency compliance orders, immediate cessation of surveillance programs that were secretly expanded under the Unity Act, unfreezing of accounts and properties seized from farmers, protesters, and whistleblowers. Legal review of every arrest made under the non-compliance clause, with compensation already announced for hundreds wrongfully imprisoned. Meanwhile, public tribunals are being scheduled in every region of the UK. These forums allow citizens to directly testify about the abuses they experienced. From unlawful arrests to government censorship, from media blackouts to financial intimidation, the mood is raw but determined. People are telling their stories not with bitterness, but with an unrelenting demand for accountability. Reform UK surges as People's Stess Party. In the political sphere, Reform UK has solidified its position as the dominant force in British politics. No longer a fringe party, it now commands an extraordinary grassroots base that includes disillusioned Labour supporters, disenfranchised Conservatives, small business owners, union members, and working-class families. Reform's messaging, freedom, accountability, national sovereignty now resonates more than ever in a country that just stared down authoritarian overreach. Nigel Farage, hailed by many as the man who stood firm when others capitulated, has pledged to avoid top-down party politics in the upcoming general election. Instead, he is calling for community primaries to select Reform candidates, a radical step toward decentralizing political power. Reform UK SIP's formal platform, unveiled in Manchester, includes a Bill of Rights enshrining free speech, property rights, and digital privacy, a term limit law for MPs to prevent careerist entrenchment, a constitutional audit to propose a written constitution, finally codifying the unwritten traditions abused by star national referenda on any future emergency powers, a complete overhaul of party funding rules and lobbying laws. These aren't just populist slogans. They're now part of Britain's political mainstream. In the aftermath of chaos, Britain has found new clarity. The protest lines have dissolved. Farmers are returning to their fields. Students to their universities. Journalists are again reporting without fear. And town halls across the UK are filled with citizens participating in rebuilding efforts, writing policy drafts, forming local councils, auditing government databases. What once felt like the brink of collapse has become a constitutional rebirth. But the message is clear. This must never happen again. The memory of silence, arrests, and state overreach still lingers. But so too does the memory of courage, protest, and a people who stood tall when their democracy faltered. And in that memory, Britain SEP's future begins.